So I have been outraged. I've been angry. I've been sad. I've felt guilty. I've felt ashamed. Uh, and I've felt, like many people, a call to action, thinking, what can I do? And while I've been focusing on that, I've also been trying to think, what am I already doing in my day-to-day life that has prevented me from having the awareness I should have had all along? And so part of me was thinking, when I am trying to answer the question, how has this been going on my whole life, and only now I am gaining an awareness of it, an education about it? And the answer keeps being that it's just not something we talk. I didn't think it existed because it's not something we talk about. Now I have a few different examples while examining that answer, that is just not something we've talked about. And in trying to answer why do we not talk about it, a few different examples of lies that white people tell themselves that have maintained the status quo for years. The first lie that white people tell themselves, ourselves, is that racism only exists in the past. And this, we don't know it's a lie we tell ourselves. We truly believe that racism exists in the past, and we measure modern day racism against the past. We learn about racism in history classes. We read about racism in books that were written in the 1800s, early 1900s. We don't follow that up with a discussion of how that's still mirrored today. We learn about it, we close the book, and we walk away, and we say, well, it's not happening anymore. Now people are equal. But it's just not the case, as we can all see. But in defining racism as slavery, racism as the Jim Crow laws, racism as violence between one race and another, we have associated the word racism with something that predates our lives. So then now, today, if we encounter somebody who's racist, what we tell ourselves is, oh, well, that person's stuck in the past. Because we still can't admit that it exists today. Or if we see a young person being racist towards somebody else, we say, well, who are his parents? Because we think, well, his parents must be stuck in the past. We have such a hard time admitting that racism exists today. Going back to all people are equal, this is kind of number 2/offshoot from racism is in the past. The second lie that we tell ourselves is that all people are equal now. So again, I'm growing up and I'm learning about racism. Racism is one person treating another person differently based on the color of their skin. Therefore, the solution is do not treat people like they're different at all, based on the color of their skin, based on anything, which means distinguishing skin colors is taboo. It is something that you just don't do. I have a lot of discomfort in saying the word white. And I'm even more uncomfortable saying the word black. If I were in the room right now with a black person and we were just hanging out and I said something about my whiteness, I would feel like I then am the one being racist. Like I'm bringing race up as a topic where all people should be equal, so race should never be considered in anything. The really dangerous part about that is that I define Canadian, I define myself as Canadian. But I would say, yeah, I'm a real Canadian, you know? Grew up in the boonies and ate maple syrup. I have an image of what a Canadian is. And my image of what, let's say, a true American hero is always some sort of white, mid-30s, gun-wielding man. It's Chuck Norris. It's, who knows who it is, but you know who it's not? It's not a black person. Just like in Canada, my image of a Canadian is not First Nations. And that's dangerous, because now we say all people are equal and should be treated equally. But now we're measuring somebody against who we are ourselves. So now, if you're not like me, you're different. So now if you don't look like a Canadian, then you're an outsider. And in America, if you don't look like the classic image of an American, then you're an outsider. And the real danger is you hear people saying, oh yeah, I'm a true American. My family came over generations ago. Well, so did theirs. Black people in America have been American as long as white people in America. And yet we still don't define Americans as black people in our minds. The white society, I mean. We still imagine the American dream as entrepreneurship and capitalism with white men in power. And that's the second dangerous lie we tell ourselves. The third dangerous lie is taboo. A taboo in general. We have so many concepts of what it is to be civil and polite. At work, I'm not allowed to discuss politics or religion, and that's just a given. In social situations where you are not very familiar with the people around you, you don't talk about politics or religion. Now, I was looking up taboos, and on multiple websites, the top 10 taboos don't even include race. And I believe that that's because race is so taboo that it's just not even up for discussion. It doesn't even make a list of taboos because you just don't talk about it. So then that means if I'm at work and somebody comes in and does talk about race, if, let's say, a black woman were to come in and reference my whiteness, then what I actually hear is somebody breaking a social code. And that's uncouth. That is vulgar. That is impolite. And now I'm not listening to what she's saying. Now I'm focusing on, well, let's sit down and talk about your behavior. That's dangerous. And even if I'm in a group of my white friends, people that I'm close with, and a very sensitive topic comes up, if it gets uncomfortable, I just remove myself from the conversation. And the lie that we tell ourselves is that that's the right thing to do, to remove yourself from an uncomfortable situation, to bite your tongue about sensitive topics. And, you know, it is human nature to evaluate, to put yourself first and put others second. And so when I'm in a situation like that, you think if I'm, let's say, with a bunch of my own managers and something about politics comes up and I truly disagree with it, I wouldn't say in retort, actually, I think Trump is a racist tyrant, because that could limit my career. That could ruin my reputation, depending on the views of the people around me. And it's not going to gain me anything. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to change who the president is. So what's the point in me saying it? That's the next dangerous thing. And that's what I think has me so shaken up, is that I am an opinionated person. And yet, it turns out what I thought was going to cost me something and not get me anything in return. So there's just no point saying it. I'm not going to change their mind. They're not going to change my mind. It's going to cost me a friend and not gain me anything. That's not true. If we had all had these conversations every single time it came up, the reality that's sinking in is that maybe it could have saved lives. If every time we're in a room and confronted with something that's uncomfortable, we say something. And instead, now, when somebody brings race up, then number one, we're taken aback because you're not supposed to talk about race. And then secondly, we go, you know, I've met thousands of people and you're the first one to bring it up. So you must be the problem. So because it's not getting talked about, when it does get brought up, that seems like a one-off that we can easily dismiss. And that is the third dangerous lie that we tell ourselves. Now, in saying all of this, I know that I've used a lot of not only I, but we or our, referencing the whole white community, white society. And I know that my experience and my conclusions cannot possibly be applied to millions of people, because that's just not the case. Everybody's going to have a different story. And so this being true for me means that it probably represents at least thousands of people. But the whole point is to start talking about it. So tell me how it's different for you. Let's all tell each other how this is different. And so if that's not what maybe stopped you talking about it, what did? And the more angles we can analyze this from, the more we can try to stop it, the more we can try to grind this to a halt and put new systems in place. Because at the rate, from what I can see, of what we're going with taboos and with eliminating topics of discussion, it's not going to be that long if things continue the way they are. It won't be that long before we're not allowed to talk about anything. We restrict ourselves from talking about anything except the weather and the good things that are happening to each of us in our own lives, and that's it. And we want to break down that system of censoring ourselves now.